Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the finalized changes to all of the DPS for Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion, Stormblood. This information is coming out of the job guide. This was mentioned in the preliminary patch notes, and I managed to find it just by kind of going through a quick Google search and trying to find a link to the job guide since the lodestone was still down. We're going to be going over the PvE actions because it would take forever to go through both, and to be honest, a lot of this stuff kind of remained the same from what we saw at the media tour, but we're going to be starting with Monk and just moving through. If there's not a lot of changes from what I remember at the media tour, then I'm just going to go over my overall thoughts on the job. And I kind of looked through Monk already, and all the like potency and TP cost reductions were brought down. The Grease Lightning duration is the same. All the positionals are still there, although there's a typo right here where it says the rear, but this is the tooltip for 4.0, and it says flank right there, so it's clearly just a small error in either translation or or just a typo in general. A lot of the traits were baked into the job, like this 10% on Twin Snakes. That was always 10% with the trait. It's just that the trait was baked into the skill itself, so that's a flat 10% all the time. Demolish was brought down to make it fit better with Touch of Death being removed, the stuns being removed, One Ilm Punch being a stun that has no diminishing returns, Mantra's old trait being baked into Mantra permanently, so it doesn't go 5 to 20%, it's just always 20%. It's pretty much all the same stuff from the media tour, the potency reduction on Forbidden Chakra. I think there is one change here between everything for Monk from what we knew from before, and that is specifically, this now is more directly says physical damage. Yoshi P said physical damage, but the tooltip I had just said all damage. And then we also have Deep Meditation, a 50% chance. So this was actually a change from the media tour. 50% chance that a chakra will open when dealing critical damage. So critical hit rate, going to be important. Every boot shine giving you a 50% chance of getting another Forbidden Chakra means you'll be using a lot more. In some fights, Monk barely even used one Forbidden Chakra before. So it'll be nice to get to use that a lot more frequently within the fight with things like Brotherhood and Deep Meditation. Overall, a lot of people are pretty upset over Monk losing the 10 potency on pretty much all of their GCDs, plus the potency on Forbidden Chakra, which makes sense considering you'll be using it a lot more. I don't think it's all that bad. With some of the TP cost reductions, should see a little bit more longevity in the fights for Monk, especially with skill speed being something people are looking at as a potential stat for them. So felt like that was kind of necessary. And with a longer Grease Lightning duration, you probably will be using Tornado Kick less, but it's still there, especially with Riddle of Earth. Overall, I'm a big fan of Monk. It's still going to be the first job I level in the expansion, but not a whole lot's different here from what we saw at the media tour. Moving on to Dragoon. So I think Dragoon also was pretty similar. They had TP cost reductions. They had some potency increases, which was actually a surprise to me overall. I didn't really expect that. Heavy Thrust had its trait built in so that it's 30 seconds there. You know, you have all these potency increases, the changes to Wheeling Thrust and Fang and Claw. And then, of course, the changes to Blood of the Dragon. All those are pretty much the same. Blood for Blood being buffed, and then having the damage reduction aspect of it nerfed into the... Well, I'm sorry, that's the trait. The trait was just baked into it. Once again, fooling me, game. You're fooling me. The whole dive ready thing with jump when you're under Blood of the Dragon. Disembowel was reduced to 5%, so that's important. That's not only a nerf to the Dragoons, but also a nerf to Bards and Machinists when partying with Dragoons. It's still 5% more than you have without them, but it's 5% less than you would have had prior. Chaos Thrust, potency increases, TP cost reductions. I was just surprised to see so many potency increases for Dragoon, but I guess they really felt like they needed it. I think they lost potency on... No, they did not. Okay. Never mind. I guess it's making up for that 5% right there. Blood of the Dragon having a shorter recast time, not your Skogul not costing Blood of the Dragon, your Wheeling Thrust and your Fang and Claws consistently increasing it. Increasing it by 10 seconds as opposed to 15 from before, but you'll always get the 10 seconds, so it should be a lot easier to maintain. Also, the new trait for Fang and Claw and Wailing Thrust, which is something we went over already. Sheer Skogul, potency increase, recast time increased, so keep that in mind. You can't use it as frequently. You'll pretty much be using it to execute on Blood of the Dragon, to make sure that it turns into Life of the Dragon, so you get access to Nastrond, which is considerably stronger than its other counterpart with a 10-second cooldown. Moving down into their Life of the Dragon here, this is when you open all the eyes and then you use Just Gogol, and then that'll just basically turn Blood of the Dragon into Life of the Dragon and give you access to Nastrond, which is just, you know, an extra potency every 10 seconds. So Dragoon didn't really change all that much. They just have an extra layer added on to what's it called? Their Blood of the Dragon, just like a little extra layer on there. But I think Dragoons ultimately should be pretty happy with all the changes except Disembowel. I mean, yeah, you lost things like internal release and whatnot, but I think Dragoons should overall be pretty happy, especially with some of the other tools they got, like Dragon Sight right here. Although, still going to be fun. Still going to be fun using that, considering it still only has that 6 Yalm range like it had in the Mediator. Ninja. So this is a job I'm paying close attention to as an ex-ninja. There was a lot of changes to this. Hide resetting your ninjutsu recast is a pretty big one. For dungeons, obviously in combat, doesn't really matter at all. But, you know, for dungeons, it's pretty nice to just always have to do that. Never have to do the 20-second countdown timer for Huton anymore either. Just Huton hide, and you're good to go for the pull. Combo potency increases, the Ninki gauge aspects of Mug, Ninki gauge generating from auto attacks, pretty much the same as before. You get trick attack at level 18 now. That's nice. I mean, you pretty much still can't use it in anything until you get Suiton, because bosses still break stealth, but it's there, at least, right? Yeah, no? Okay. Well, in dungeons, you'll be able to use it, so that'll be nice for trash, I suppose. Moving down, Shadowfang basically replacing Dancing Edge, but still having its damage over time effect, so you don't have, you know, as many combos on Ninja. Should work a lot better. Death Blossom, seeing a pretty significant potency increase, thank God. Armor Crush, yeah, potency increases. Again, just a lot of stuff that's just better across the board. People are still concerned about Shadewalker and Smokescreen's usefulness. People are concerned that Trick Attack's not going to be as highly valued as it used to be because of Goad being crossroll. People really think Goad being crossroll and some of the other enmity tools being introduced is really going to reduce the efficiency of Ninja, but I don't see that happening. I think Ninja's still going to be in a pretty good spot. Look at Dream Within a Dream's buff. 150 potency per hit, and on top of that, it had its recast time reduced. Just flat buff across the board for Dream Within a Dream. Nice, considering I'm not a big fan of the skill overall. And then all their other skills that actually use their new actions that use the Ninki gauge are all so strong. I think a lot of ninjas will be pretty happy. You don't even have to worry about Kiss of the Wasp or Kiss of the Viper anymore, because it's just built into your passives. Look, your traits. Dripping Blades 2 just increases your damage dealt by 20%. There you go. Don't got to worry about it at all. Enhanced Mug, making Mug generate Ninki gauge. Shikuchi resetting anytime you use Katan, Raiton, or Hyoton, and then you just have the one that actually lets your Ninki gauge work. So I think ninjas will be overall pretty happy with what they're getting. They don't seem any weaker, but we'll have to see how it pans out. I think ninjas are still going to be plenty strong in the meta, especially when looking at their ninjutsu real quick, which pretty much all went completely unchanged. So that was worth keeping in mind there. Samurai, I remember some people saying that there were some changes here. From what we saw at the Mediator, the big thing being positionals, also this being 5% and not, what was it, 50% or something in the Mediator. That would have been ridiculous. I don't remember all the potencies off the top of my head. I have the screenshots from the Mediator, but I'm not going to pull those up for the sake of the video. Overall, it still seems like the incredibly high skill ceiling, so like people who are really into min-maxing are going to have a lot of fun with Samurai. And they also remove some of its more punishing factors from the Mediator. For example, your rear combo bonus on Gecko and your side combo bonus on Kasha are now only 5 bonus Kenki, which you'll still want, don't get me wrong. It's just not as detrimental if you're not able to hit the positional as it was in the Mediator, where all of it was baked into the positionals. That includes for these as well, which also had it, although they reduced the Kenki generation of some of these skills from the Mediator as well. Other than that, I think all people want to see is the 720 potency and the 800 potency. Yep, 800 potency right there. There's definitely some other changes here, but it's going to take too long to get through them all in one video, so let's move on. And this is still 720. So yeah, I think people are still going to have a lot of fun with Samurai. If you were into Samurai from what you saw before, I don't think anything's changed significantly enough to the point where you're going to have changed your mind. Now, Bard for me is a big one. because I had the most fun playing Bard at the Media Tour. So I'm really curious to see what has changed, if anything at all. Wanderer's Minuet not having cast times is pretty much going to be in all the 4.0 adjustment, tabs on the right-hand side. Straight Shot being exclusive now to them is another thing. Raging Strikes only having an 80-second recast. So very important that Raging Strikes only has an 80-second recast time, because that is the same cooldown that you have on your songs. So you could theoretically always line up Raging Strikes with the with Wanderer's Minuet for the Pitch Perfect procs. And that's going to be pretty important to see how bards end up min-maxing which one of the songs is best to use Raging Strikes in. I haven't done the math. I'll leave that to them. Pitch Perfect was only kind of a guess off the top of my head. Some TP cost reductions, getting some of the abilities at different levels. Bloodletter having its potency reduced, which is fine. It's whatever. Bloodletter is one of the major fun factors. All the songs pretty much the same as the Media Tour. Still the 2% crit for all party members within range, and then giving them their own buffs, each of them Ballad, Paeon, and Wanderer's Minuet. Foe Requiem increases damage taken by nearby enemies by 3%. Said the opposite in the tooltip at the Media Tour, but I think the Japanese tooltip was correct. This is a pretty big change. It's just 3% all damage, which is a pretty strong thing to have. On top of the 2% crit, you're pretty much going to permanently be giving your party. So your supportive effects are a little bit less prominent, like they're not as noticeable, but they're longer duration. So really important thing for bards. On top of that, getting the repertoire stacks here can be stacked up to 4 times. Yeah, so it says 4%, but it says stacks up to 4 times. So a lot of people are saying that the stacking thing wasn't really a big thing there, but I don't know. I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the comments that came regarding that. You can only get your procs also for Reign of Death and Bloodletter in Ballad now, which is pretty big. And then, of course, the Pitch Perfect procs for Wanderer's Minuet, also pretty big. I'm curious to see if people really try to get to 3 stacks and hope they don't accidentally lose stacks because they're trying to use Pitch Perfect at 3 stacks. But we'll have to see what it works. Now, a big thing with Barrage is it, what's it called? Triples the number of strikes for single target weapon skills. Additional effects added only once. But it now allows critical strikes. This is a big thing, because in the Media Tour, it still said that crits didn't work, but direct hits did work. However, Barrage now allows critical strikes, which gives you a lot more crit synergy than you did before. But with critical hit rate having some changes to or critical hits not being as potent as they used to be, the fact that you still have all these critical hit rate related things going on with Bard will still make it an incredibly strong stat for your Bard without a doubt. And going back to Ninja, the same was there. Duality also works with critical strikes. We kind of sped past that a little bit. But then again, same deal. Critical strikes will be a little bit more effective for them as well. But I'm still looking for the skill speed effects on Ninja for something a little bit later on. Warden's Peon only works on one thing. It can't remove an effect and then also prevent another effect. It can pretty much only do remove one. Sidewinder unchanged. Troubadour is still really weird to me, because while all the effects are really good, timing them properly is going to be somewhat problematic, just because you're pretty much going to consistently go through your song rotation the same. But in each fight, it means you're going to have to maybe move the song order around to get the desired effect. I think Ballad is the strongest one here. The main reason being max HP is the only one of these 3 effects that works against all types of damage, regardless of physical or magical, over the 30-second duration. So I think that that is going to be the desired effect that most people want out of Troubadour, unless somehow the vulnerability ends up mattering more in the short term. I don't know. I feel like the max HP is... I guess technically max HP just gives you a buffer, while damage done is better for consistent AoE output. So it's not the only one, but the 15% is the thing that comes to mind for me. The updates to your dots, getting your own version of Chakra is very nice, and Refulgent Arrow, which you can only use under Straighter Shot, and will probably be what you'll try to line up Barrage with. Yes, Imperial Arrow is still very strong. In fact, Imperial Arrow in some ways is stronger because it gives you an automatic proc with any one of your songs when it's available. Assuming that trait hasn't changed, we'll scroll down in a little bit. But it's also not as reliable to try and hold Barrage for Refulgent Arrow, but you get the procs often enough to the point where it's reliable enough. Moving into here, yeah, 20% chance. Yeah, We'll have to see if it ends up being worth holding Barrage until you get another Refulgent Arrow. We'll have to wait and see for that one. And yes, guarantees the trigger of any effect for Enhanced Imperial Arrow. Okay, just wanted to see that. My personal opinion, Bard's so much fun now. It's just, I actually enjoyed the 3.0 version, but I love this version of it. It was just so much fun for me to play when I got to play it at the Media Tour. So with all the changes that they're getting, plus some of their cross-roll stuff, still having the old utility from before, plus a new one in that of Palisade, I think Bards are going to be kind of weird to work into a party, but if you enjoy it, I feel like you're going to enjoy it a lot. Now, Machinist, just some clarifications here. A lot of potency changes, TP cost changes, stuff like that. But I guess the big thing is all the heat changes, the way you reload interacts with heat, reducing the heat, ammo being reduced to 3, cooldown on reload being reduced to 30 seconds. There are a lot of, changes here and there for a lot of the skills here, on top of the new effects some of them have for heat. For example, Hot Shot increases heat gauge by 10. That's another new thing you have to keep in mind when doing your damage buff for Hot Shot, because if your Hot Shot's wearing off and you're at 90 heat and you don't want to push it over to 100 just yet, you'll have to prioritize cooldown over this. Otherwise, it's going to put you in a pretty awkward scenario. Rapid Fire, of course, because its Gauss Barrel's gone, it pretty much just removes the, it just does what it did before. You just don't have to worry about the cast time aspect of it, just because there's no cast times on this job either. So you can enjoy either or. Wildfire, you get to use it more frequently. Doesn't last as long, though. So you're going to have to cram everything into those 10-second time frames every minute, as opposed to 15 seconds every minute and a half. So you'll be using Wildfire quite a bit more frequently, and interested to see how all the skills line up. I haven't, mathed anything out for Machinist, so just pointing that out. Bishop turrets, one of the big things for me. There's, again, potency changes and effect changes here. Hypercharge effect increases damage taken by 5%. As opposed to both your turrets basically have the same effect, increases target's damage taken by 5%. The big difference being Bishop is AoE. So keep that in mind as well. They're not separate debuffs now for Hypercharge, but it's also only 5%. Hypercharge also has, Bishop Auto Turret also has the fall-off damage now, like some of the other AoE things. Maybe it had it before. I don't remember it having it before, so maybe I sound dumb right now. But no, actually, it straight up says that this is a change. So yeah, it now has the fall-off damage thing like Flare and Holy and a bunch of the other skills. Gauss Barrel is now pretty much entirely, completely revamped. They didn't even want to describe it. They're just like, read the tooltip, you fool, and learn how the heat gauge works. Remove barrel, removing your Gauss Barrel from your weapon. Should be pretty straightforward what that does. Gauss Round, use them more frequently, 15 seconds on that one. Don't even need Gauss Barrel for it anymore either. So kind of weird. Dismantle, being a little bit more straightforward, just lowers target's damage dealt by 10% flat, which is a lot stronger than the way it was before, and no longer shares a cooldown with Rend Mind. Is Rend Mind even in this thing anymore? No, it's not even there anymore. So I don't know why they didn't just say Rend Mind is gone. Hypercharge obviously can't increase MP or TP regeneration anymore because that's not built into your turrets anymore. And then Ricochet was changed into one of those fall-off AoE off global cooldowns as well. And then all their new actions, we've been over these already in some of my other videos, and it doesn't look like these have changed at all in a sense. The Rook and the Bishop overdrives are still the same. Flamethrower is 60 instead of 6, which is about the only change. And then the heated shots, this all looks pretty much the same. There might be some slight potency changes that I'm not remembering. Increasing the heat gauge is all there. So, Machinist also was a lot of fun. Hasn't changed much from when we talked about it last for the Media Tour, but there are some important things to note there. I guess the biggest one is just remembering the way that heat works. Let's see, do they have a clear description of heat down here? Shot Mastery, heated when your gauge is at 50 or higher. Oh, yeah, they do. At this time, Gauss Barrel is automatically removed. While overheated, a firearm will deal additional damage, but soon become too hot to use, basically meaning your Gauss Barrel will become too hot to use. So it's going to be all about maximizing the 10-second uptime of your heat gauge when it's full, and timing that with your wildfires once per minute, as well as timing it with all the other off-global cooldown skills and any of your other powerful skills you have in that 10-second time frame. So going to be interesting seeing Machinist work that out. I, again, think Machinist is more fun than it was before, and it feels a hell of a lot more unique. So enjoy your overheating. Enjoy them. Then we finally get into Black Mage, Summoner, and Red Mage. I was thinking of breaking this video up into 2 as well, like I did with Tanks and Healers, and then I did this one and making it 3 videos, but we're just going to burn through All of them pretty much. Now, again, not a Black Mage expert. Increasing the duration of Umbral Ice, whatever. Same for Astral Fire. Nothing much going on here. Blizzard 2 is still around. So that's, what else am I going to say? Fire 2 had some of its potency brought down. Mana Ward now also gives physical damage as opposed to just magical damage. So it's just a 30% barrier. It's not any specific kind of damage. What else do we have? Nothing, nothing. Thunder 3. Well, Thunder 2 is AoE now. Does it say that anywhere? Yeah. Thunder 2 is now AoE and has a lower percent chance of giving you the Thundercloud proc. But you have an AoE Thunder now. So enjoy it, because that'll be something for you to place on AoE pulls. And Thunder 2 eventually becomes Thunder 4, just like Thunder 1 eventually becomes Thunder 3. Thunder 3 also, in terms of its cast time, it's reduced to Thunder 1's cast time for 2.5 seconds, so you don't have to worry about Thunder 3's increased cast time, and it has the 10% chance for the Thundercloud proc. Moving on, Ethereal Manipulation, character lock immediately after execution has been adjusted, so you won't be locked in place as long. That's nice. Flare has a higher fall-off damage than it did before. You'll be using it more frequently in AoE situations, though, thanks to Umbral Hearts, so that's probably the main reason why. Sharpcast lasts longer, so, it's nice. Enochian now is permanent as long as you're in Astral Fire or Umbral Ice, and every 30 seconds you'll get a proc that will allow you to use Foul, which we'll be going over in a second here. So don't have to worry about maintaining Enochian, just worry about maintaining Astral Fire and Umbral Ice, and that'll automatically maintain Enochian for you. So have a good time with that. Blizzard 4 doesn't obviously affect your Enochian timer anymore. It had its potency brought down, but it grants you Umbral Hearts now, which nullifies the MP cost of Astral Fire for your fire spells for 3 casts, or you can reduce the MP cost of Flare by 2/3. So again, you'll be using Flare more frequently in AoE, which explains the higher fall-off damage. Potency on Fire 4 was also brought down a bit here. Ley lines, you can move immediately to your ley lines. Your ley lines were also here. Those were completely unchanged. Thunder 4, just the updated Thunder 2, stronger. You'll be using it at level 64, and it'll be automatic. Triple cast, next 3 spells require no cast time. Worth mentioning, I didn't know this because I'm not a Black Mage player. I didn't know that Fire 4 had a higher cast time than recast time. So as great as this is for mobility, I expect Black Mages to use it during high power periods just to cut that extra 0.5 seconds off and have the mobility at the same time. And then finally you have Foul here, another AoE skill, probably another reason why Flare has more fall off. Every 30 seconds you'll get this massive 650 potency AoE that has the fall off for 10% more for each target eventually, after all remaining enemies after the 5th being 50% reduced. Black Mage looks like a lot of fun. People are somewhat concerned of its utilities not being as important because APOC was moved into Crossroll. Mana Shift is ability that feels made for Black Mage, considering they have an infinite MP pool. That being said, I mean, are you going to take it for the every 2.5 minutes mana shift? Hard to really determine if that's a utility worth, taking Black Mage for. But I think in terms of their damage output, their raid presence, it'll be very much the same as it was before. It's just that their gameplay has been kind of shored up to bring the skill floor up a lot more, especially with the way Enochian works now. Just to go over this real quick, their Thunder Mastery, upgrading Thunder to Thunder 3, upgrading Thunder 2 to Thunder 4, which is this one right here. The Polyglot effect. These are all things that were already discussed in the abilities themselves. Required MP, yeah. Reduces MP required to cast Flare by 1/3 while under the effect of Umbral Hearts. And that's different from the way it described it before. So I'm assuming it's just some sort of translation buffer mistake or something like that. But regardless, that's a Black Mage. I like the Black Mage changes. I might actually give it a shot to see how much different it feels from before. But we'll have to see where they stand compared to some of the other jobs, because jobs like Summoner and Red Mage come with some pretty handy tools. A lot of people aren't super thrilled. Summoner's playstyle is much less dot-centric now and is way more Ruin and Pet-centric, which seems really weird because your dots have this 18-second duration, and I think when we get later on, let me just go double-check that now, Bio 3, when it eventually becomes Bio 3, yeah, your dots have a 30-second duration. So you're not going to be casting them nearly as frequently as you were before, which means you'll be doing Ruin a lot more. Ruin had its potency buffed, although Ruin 3 had its potency brought down, and Tri-Disaster even has some potency buffs for Ruin as well. So it's just kind of weird. It's not as exciting until you get to the Bahamut, but it should make for a little bit more consistency, and again, bring that skill floor up significantly. Aetherflow having nice Summoner PvE title 05 update. 10% maximum MP on Ether Flow as opposed to what it was before. And then, of course, you have Ether Trails being permanent now from what we can see. Moving on, moving on. Bane nerfs, massive still. Their AoE damage went down. Their AoE damage outside of Dreadworm Trance went down pretty significantly, like their consistent AoE with Bane and Shadow Flare, because of the similar changes to Scholar, like I mentioned in the last video, where you're losing uptime on it in exchange for potency and the inability to replace it if you screwed up. Those are a few trade-offs to get that extra potency in the shorter period of time. So I'm curious to see how that actually ends up working. Another thing worth mentioning, summoners used to use Blizzard 2 as their filler skill for AoE pulls, and they don't have it anymore because it's Thaumaturge and Black Mage exclusive. So that pretty much leaves you with only Tribind. And Tribind is only worth it on, and I say worth, and I don't really mean worth, on 4 targets or more. That's when it becomes a potency efficient, but then it still has a longer cast time. I don't think you'll be seeing many summoners spamming Tribind unless there are a metric fuck ton of enemies, like 9 to 10 enemies or something like that. And even then, it's probably going to feel pretty embarrassing to be using Tribind. So, yeah. The good news is Pain Flare had its recast time reduced to 5 seconds, so you can use that more on AoEs to generate, you know, Ether Trail. It's not helping, is it? Also, Enkindle, you'll be using more frequently, but I'm still not a big fan of the way it works. Although I like the idea of pushing more power into the pet, I'm not a big fan of the way that reducing Enkindle's cooldown works. Again, very Ruin-centric, because it's based on how often you get Ruin 4 procs. Going down to Try Disaster, as we're here, again, see, increases the potency of Ruin spells used against a target by 20. Now, one thing that I'm not seeing here that was an effect it had in the media tour was that it had its cooldown automatically reset. Maybe it says it in the traits when I scroll down. It had its cooldown automatically reset every time I went in the Dreadworm Trance. Does it say it in Dreadworm Trance? Yeah, okay. They just didn't put it in Try Disaster. They put it in Dreadworm Trance. Okay, just wanted to make sure, because that was important. That was very, very important that it still did that. Death Flare has the AoE fall off, even though it has a shorter recast. I mean, it's still based on the fact that it consumes your Dreadworm Trance, so pretty important still to go over that. Ruin 4, having the potency. Ether Pact, which I'll have to go through in a little bit here. Devotion increases the attack potency and healing magic potency of the closest party member by 5%. Also reduces damage taken by that party member by 5% for 15 seconds. That's what we were missing. We didn't have a duration on it before, so it's very important that we actually have a duration. Still, some raid utility there on top of the effects that Ifrit and Garuda were both given to give them a little bit more of raid utility as well. I'm actually digging that Summoner has quite a bit of raid utility built into its job now in terms of increasing damage dealt. So I'm a fan of that, just not a fan of spamming Ruin. You know what I mean? Or trying to keep Try Disaster uptime as efficiently as possible. Summon Bahamut. Going to be about doing an action every 1.5 seconds, so he spams as many worm waves as possible, and then using 2 Akmorns per summon Bahamut, which is massive AoE damage. Even with the fall off, that's a lot of AoE damage. Let's just be perfectly clear about that. Again, important thing, Shining Emerald, as well as Garuda's Contagion, increases the damage that the target takes from magical sources by 10%. So again, some raid utility if you're running a magic heavy composition for some reason, or just a straight damage increase for you and any healers that might be DPSing in your group. If you're not and you have a mostly physical composition, you also have Ifrit's new Radiant Shield, which anytime someone takes a hit while they have Radiant Shield, it increases the physical damage they take by 2%. 2% is not a lot, but with the 24-second uptime and only a 60-second cooldown, it has like a 45% uptime. So in terms of the longevity of the fight, that should prove pretty effective, especially because it can apply to multiple targets as long as they're all hitting a target that has Radiant Shield on them. So it should, again, provide some good utilities there. And then on top of that, having APOC and Addle and whatnot, your cross-roll system will still, of course, be as powerful as it was before, other than the fact that Virus and Addle, you know, that whole situation. And then, of course, like I said, the Ruin 4 procs, you know, upgrading of the dots to their higher tiers, the Enhanced Enkindle getting the 10-second reduction whenever you get a Ruin 4 proc, and the one that actually lets you summon Bahamut. So I actually kind of like it. I like a lot of the ideas. Again, just not a fan of spamming Ruin. That's just it. I don't only like spamming Ruin. I like having other things to do. Red Mage, again, really hasn't seen too many changes from what we saw before. People are still concerned about MP consumption for them because it doesn't look like any sort of tool here was mentioned in terms of giving MP back, which a lot of people were concerned about. I remember somebody saying that they go MP neutral if you take Lucid Dreaming, which is absolutely going to be mandatory for Red Mage. But I also remember someone saying that they go dry after 5 minutes. So if you're not possessing things like a Bard for a refresh, I am a little concerned on that front. But we'll see how it actually pans out when we get to play it in game, especially because I can't see any of the MP costs here. And I will see them in game itself. But Red Mage, I felt like it was the easiest job that I played at the media tour. It doesn't look like much of that has changed at all. It's very straightforward, just a priority system that I think people will get the hang of very, very quickly. It's fun. You have a lot of mobility. You have a lot of power, and then Embolden, of course, giving you that raid utility, giving them personal magic damage dealt. Although they nerfed the magic damage portion of it for yourself. And left the physical damage the same. So a little bit of a nerf to the Red Mage's output right here with Embolden, but still the main thing is their synergy with physical heavy compositions, something that they share with Summoner. Giving the 10% physical damage dealt is more important than it is just getting that 10% buff to you. But anyway, that's pretty much going to be a wrap. There's not much, that's it. That's all the jobs. I just wanted to cover any changes that might have been present here, give my thoughts overall on each of the jobs and the changes that they got for Stormblood. We're less than an hour till the servers actually go live. So I'm going to get this posted to YouTube, and I'm going to get back to hanging with my Twitch chat. We're going to be posting videos all week for our 24/7 stream. I'll be taking shifts with my girlfriend and with one of my moderators, Tequila Shots. So in the next week or so, you come by the stream, it'll be live, unless barring an internet issue. So be sure to come by, say hello, enjoy the expansion. We'll even be skipping all the cutscenes to make sure nobody's spoiled should they decide to stop by the stream. Anyway, I will see all of you on YouTube in the next video. Twitch, we're going to be hanging out for a very long time right now. So let's get back to that. I'll see you guys next time. And until then, take care. All right, we Gucci.